right. Hello, everyone. My name's Kim Janey. Here we are having a Boston City Council meeting. This is our third remote City Council meeting, joined by all of my colleagues. I'm going to ask our clerk to do the roll call so we can ascertain the presence of a quorum. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councilor Arroyo.
Present.
Councilor Baker.
Here.
Councilor Vaught.
Present.
Councilor Braden.
Present.
Councilor Campbell.
Present.
Councilor Edwards. Councilor Sabi George.
Present.
Councilor Flaherty.
Yeah.
Councilor Flynn.
Here.
Councilor Janey.
Present.
Councilor Mejia.
Present.
Councilor O'Malley.
Present.
And Councilor Wu.
Present.
Thank you, Madam President. All are in attendance.
Thank you. Could we just hear from Councilor Edwards again? Councilor Edwards, are you there?
I hear everything.
Okay, we're having a difficult time hearing you, Carrie, or someone on central staff. If you could contact Councilor Edwards to try to work out her Wi-Fi issue. It sounds like that's a connectivity issue on her end. She is present, she's here. I've been informed by the clerk that we have a quorum present, and so we're gonna move on with our meeting. Today, the clerk will give the invocation, and after the invocation, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we move on to that, Madam Clerk, Carrie, if you could make sure that everyone is muted, that would be helpful, except for the clerk. Madam Clerk, could you please open us up with prayer?
Thank you, Madam President. Loving God, thank you for the gift of family and community, for the life and love we share. We ask you to make us aware of your presence during this time of transition. Help us to know that we are not alone in life's comings and goings. Help us to accept change as an opportunity to grow in our trust and understanding of each other and you. Help us to refocus on who we are and what we are about. Remind us that change can bring new energy, new life, and a recommitment to all we hold sacred. Grant us the security of knowing we rest in the faithfulness of your care. May this period of transition be a time of transformation, allowing us to become all we are to be. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Before we dive into our agenda, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize all of our council staff for how hard they are working, responding to constituent concerns and getting important information out in our community that can help save lives. I also want to say thank you to central staff. This new normal, working from home and holding our meetings and our hearings remotely, requires that we think of new ways of doing our work. And when we're physically present together in the chamber, our process relied heavily on paper, whether that was to review late files or amendments. And now this new normal, which is a work in progress, requires that we make adjustments to ensure that our legislative process can continue in the context of our new reality. And so while late files are still frowned upon, as they're not noticed, it is important that we're able to respond with the urgency that this crisis requires. And so for late files, for amendments, et cetera, we need to figure out how we do that. I also want to thank my colleagues on the council. I want to thank the mayor and his team, first responders, medical staff, and the residents of our city I know this is a very difficult time. We're all experiencing a lot of challenges, especially financial challenges, but I'm very confident that we will get through this together, as we always do. I want to remind folks who are watching that today is Census Day, and by now every household in our nation should have received its 2020 census forms, and participation is easier than ever. You can respond by telephone, by mail, and if you need more information, you can call 1-800-923-8282, or you can visit 2020census.gov. As soon as we finish this meeting, I'm going to fill out my own census form, and I hope everyone else will as well if they haven't done so already. Now, moving on to the first order of business, the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand as approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes are so approved. We will now move on from communications from His Honor the Mayor. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 057?
Madam President, I'm sorry, Madam President, I think we just skipped the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, Lord Jesus. Thank you so much, Councilor Matt O'Malley. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the
to the flag of the United States
of
of
America,
America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands
one
one nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all. Thank you so much for that reminder. Important that we continue our routines. They are very important given the challenges that we are facing. Now we will move on to communications from His Honor the Mayor. And Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0577 into the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0577, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $157,500 in the form of a grant for the F-18 Hazard Mitigation Grant Program awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, passed through the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, to be administered by the Emergency Management Department. The grant will fund the Boston Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam President. The grant is obviously pretty straightforward. As chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seeking suspension of the rules and passage of this docket. With COVID-19 and all that is happening, we're trying to get these resources into the hands of our departments as soon as possible. So seeking suspension of the rules and passage of this docket. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0577. But instead of doing a yay or nay vote, as we often do for suspending and passage of dockets, we'll do a roll call vote. I think given that this amount is above 100,000 and our practice has been to have a hearing, and I know we want to respond with the urgency that this crisis requires, and so it is important that we move these dockets through so that our city can receive these resources. So we will certainly move forward in suspending the rules and passage of this docket, but we'll do so through a roll call vote just because the amount is more than 100,000. And I know ordinarily we have hearings for amounts that are greater than that, but because it's important that we have transparency and accountability, we will move forward with a roll call vote. So,
Madam President?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? I think I would love to have a sort of a discussion on that because I just for consistency purposes, want to be crystal clear that, rules require roll call vote in particular instances, deference to chairs with respect to when they want to suspend and pass, a yay or nay vote, obviously, to avoid roll call votes at different times, I think is an important part or tool available to us. So, and I don't know that we've done that for some of the other dockets that exceeded $100,000 threshold. So would like to have, I think, more conversation on that particular piece, unless there was already a conversation and I missed it.
No. I just think, our practice has been, and this is not written in our rules, it's just our practice has been, for the sake of transparency and for accountability. I know I've done it, I know you've done it, I know many of my colleagues have done it. When there is an amount of a grant that is under $100,000, we obviously try to move that quickly. Now we are in a crisis situation and we still need to be able to move things quickly. It has been our practice for amounts of grants that exceed $100,000 that we have a hearing. Now, obviously, we may not want to have a hearing for every single grant that comes through the city that exceeds $100,000, but I just think it's important that we take time to make sure that we are all kind of on board with the passage of the docket for the sake of transparency and accountability in terms of how we govern. I'm certainly happy to hear from other colleagues if people want to weigh in.
I completely agree with you. My fear is that if we do a roll call vote for suspension and passage of this docket and subsequent dockets, that suddenly you may be required to do roll call votes for other dockets. So I think we have to err on the side of caution. I think we can still be transparent, of course, and still speak to why a chair wants to suspend and pass for a particular docket for a particular reason. I imagine in the future I may not suspend and pass for other dockets, even if, say, it's below $100,000, if it's new funding or a topic that is controversial in some way, that kind of thing. But in this particular instance, I think we have to err on the side of caution. I would just suggest that we still keep an up or down vote, because then I think we sort of get into a place where it might be more difficult to go back to that practice and do a roll call vote, and then be required to do a roll call vote for other things. So that's just my thought for consistency purposes, and not to.
Yep. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. For this, we are going to move forward with the roll call vote. I'm certainly happy to entertain any comments from colleagues if others want to weigh in. I think, again, as chair, and I certainly respect you as chair and wanting to move this docket forward, I think it's important that this docket move forward. I think it's important that we, as a body, are able to move these grants through our process as quickly as we can. But, absent that full discussion that many of these dockets would require under normal circumstances, they would have most likely a hearing, maybe not always. There are always exceptions to the rules. And so just wanting to offer us the ability to kind of go on record to say, yes, yay, this docket should pass, as opposed to, the ayes have it. That's the thinking behind a roll call vote here. The importance of making sure that even given the crisis, that we can continue to move the work forward, but that we are still making sure that the accountability and the transparency that we all believe in is also present in our process. So that's the thinking behind that. If there are no other comments or questions, I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Docket number 0577, Councilor Arroyo.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo, yes. Councilor
And the
Baker.
other question is, what would the expenses be for moving around staff? Are you talking about like overtime for police officers that have to work different shifts, or what exactly are the expenses associated with?
Where's that solution?
Everybody's unmuted now, so someone's having a private conversation. I vote yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Bach.
Aye.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Braden.
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Edwards.
Yeah.
Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Sabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Sabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Madam President, docket number 0577 has been passed unanimously.
Thank you so much. We'll now move on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Madam President, sorry, I had my hand raised in the Zoom app. I just had a point of order, if it's possible to make a comment.
Yes, the chair recognizes Councilor Wu.
So I just thought it would be helpful to clarify just from a rules perspective on the exchange that just happened. So basically, according to Rule 10, the presiding officer shall declare all votes, but if any member doubts a vote, the presiding officer shall cause the vote to be taken by roll call. So I think just interpreting what happened, essentially, it's still up to the chair to decide how an item is pulled to the floor and to move for the vote to suspend and pass, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the council president's right, or any councilor's right who wants to doubt the vote, to trigger a roll call vote. So essentially, if you're telling us that you'll be doubting the vote for any amount over $100,000, that's more, I think, what happened, as opposed to saying we have a new rule that anything over 100,000.
No, right, exactly. I'm not, so just to be clear, and I appreciate that, we have our rules, and I am not creating new rules that we have not voted on, but it's how we interpret in our rules, as well as the open meeting law, as well as our charter, and make sure that we are adhering to all of those things in the context of our new normal, and that we are bringing the public along with us, and that we are doing our business openly and transparently. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Now we will move on to motions, orders, and resolutions. And Madam Clerk, the next docket is 0578.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0578. Councilor Flynn offered the following resolution, urging insurance carriers to provide continuous coverage to residents during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Continuous coverage for their policyholders during the coronavirus pandemic. During this time, I believe it is critical that our residents have continuous access to their health insurance, as well as auto, home, renters, and life insurance that are necessary. Because of the virus, we see significant job losses for our residents and families, many of whom may be unable to pay their insurance premium as a result. This resolution urges insurance companies to provide continuous coverage to their policyholders during this pandemic, as well as consideration of deferred or modified payments planned if their policyholder cannot pay premiums due to financial hardships during this crisis. I hope that I can suspend and pass this resolution today so that we can continue to advocate for our working families during this critical period of time. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering if anyone else would like to speak to the matter. By a show of hands, the chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor. Let's make sure you're unmuted.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the maker on this. As a parent with 4 kids, with a larger family, all of our families across the city, and all of our individuals, all of our residents, insurance is such a precious resource, such a precious asset. So I just want to applaud the maker on recognizing some of the anxiety so many of our residents feel across our city and really across our country right now, as the impacts of COVID-19 have had on employment and have really had on access to health insurance. So I just want to thank Councilor Flynn for bringing this before us and recognizing some of the real needs that our residents have, and acknowledging some of the anxiety that I'm sure too many of our residents have across the city. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to speak? The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam President, and I just want to thank the maker. Please add my name. And I think as we sort of learned on a call earlier today, it's important, and we'll be talking about this probably a little later on in the session with respect to when we're providing assistance to some of our more vulnerable residents, particularly those that are renters and also small property owners. We have to give consideration to the other two legs of that stool, which is our local community banks as well as our insurance company. So our colleague, Councilor Flynn, is right, to make sure that we're continuing to put some pressure on our insurance companies, but we need to make sure that we're inviting them to the table when we're making decisions that impact not only their industries, but ultimately their ability to provide access to resources for our most vulnerable residents as we move forward. So I know that all of our phones are ringing, particularly from small local businesses that are going to be struggling to be able to afford those commercial rents. We're hearing from tenants, our neighbors, family members struggling to be able to pay their rents, as well as from small property owners that are going to be having a difficult time paying their mortgage. All of that is very relative and real as we're moving forward. We need to, if we're making decisions as leaders, we need to include the banks and the insurance companies in those decisions. So I'm happy to see that Councilor Flynn has a resolution urging them to continue to step up, and we need to continue to work with them and invite them to the table to help us create the necessary solutions moving forward in order for us to keep people, with the roof over their head, with insurance payments and premiums coming in, but also as we move through this in order to get our economy to bounce back. So I appreciate it, and again, please add my name.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. Is anyone else looking to speak? The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
I would like to support this resolution. The other concern I have is to ensure that there are no impediments to our residents in Boston seeking medical care. This is an unprecedented crisis that we haven't seen. And the other concern I have is that in the area of out of network payments, I think we should ensure that if someone turns up to a doctor, an office for care in a COVID crisis, that they will not be penalized if they are out of network, that they should have a seamless system that anyone can access care wherever they can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor. No.
I'm sorry.
I think you're all set now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the maker for offering this resolution. I'd like to add my name. In addition, I'd also like to uplift that there are people who are still paying their monthly insurance rate now that they've been unemployed, and wanted to just make sure that we are looking at how we can help provide some relief to those folks who are still paying the full premium, knowing that now they're unemployed, and what can we do to help support those individuals as well. So I would like to thank the maker and offer my name in support of this.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
I just wanted to add my name as well and thank the author of this resolution for all of his leadership on issues as we're thinking about families who are most vulnerable and historically left behind. So this is an incredibly important issue at all levels. I'm glad that we're lifting our voice at the city level as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak on this matter? We will now ask those who want to add their names to please show their hands. And Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Mejia, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Bach, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Braden, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Wu, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Campbell, and please also add the chair. Councilor Flynn seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0578. All those in favor say aye.
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 The
Aye.
ayes.
Aye.
The ayes. Any nays? No. Okay, the ayes have it, and docket 0578 has been adopted. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0579?
Docket 0579, Councilor Flynn offered the following order for hearing to discuss resources available to Boston Veteran Services during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I called for this hearing to discuss the impact the COVID-19 virus has on veterans and military families. I continue to coordinate with Commissioner Santiago in the mayor's office and discussions with the VA and the state as well. But during this epidemic, during this crisis, we want to make sure that our veterans, our military families know exactly what services are available to them, whether they're city services, the state services, or federal services. I recently had the opportunity to talk to Commissioner Santiago at Veterans about what services are available for Boston residents. I have talked to the State Department of Veterans Services and recently visited the West Roxbury VA as well. But it's critical that we make sure that all of our veterans know what services are available, especially during this difficult time. Right now, the VA Health Center is having some challenges as it relates to transportation for their patients going to the VA Health Center and home. We're doing a lot of over the phone appointments. We're doing a lot of over the phone, transactions with the pharmacy and with other providers as well. So I'm looking forward to a robust discussion on how we can make sure that our veterans, our military families, and our disabled veterans, our women veterans, also make sure that they have the services and benefits that they earned. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak on the matter? Would anyone like to add, would you like to speak? Okay. Would anyone like to add their name? Councilor Matt O'Malley, did you want to speak or add your name? Everyone's adding their name. Madam Clerk, if we could please add Councilor Mejia, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Wu, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Baker, Councilor O'Malley. Please also add the chair. Docket 0579 will be referred to the Committee on Veteran and Military Services. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0580?
Docket 0580, Councilor Flynn offered the following resolution supporting our nurses and healthcare workers during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I filed this resolution to offer our support to the nurses and healthcare workers who are at the front line of this pandemic. I have been in constant contact with the Mass Nurses Association, and I know that our nurses and healthcare professionals need all the support that we can give them. This resolution urges that all frontline healthcare workers be provided with appropriate personal protective equipment, and that hospitals consider triage outside of the facility, designated floors for COVID-19 patients to reduce exposure. We also ask for a halt to all hospital closures, staff reductions. Moreover, we need to support our frontline healthcare workers with childcare, paid leave. Finally, we must continue to advocate for widespread physical distancing in the public to slow the spread of this virus so that our medical system is not overloaded. I hope that we can support this this resolution today to ensure that our nurses and healthcare providers receive the necessary equipment that they need and they deserve. This body has had a long-standing relationship with our nurses, and we're always supporting our nurses because they're always supporting our families, especially during difficult times, and they need to be treated with the respect and dignity that they've earned. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank my dear colleague and friend, the District 2 City Councilor. I haven't been able to definitively prove this, but I can say with a high degree of certainty that my district probably has the highest percentage of nurses of any council district, perhaps in the country. And the men and women, all of our frontline health providers, we all know, we all share in one unified voice our deep, not only our appreciation, our admiration, our respect. So I appreciate, obviously ask that my name be added to this resolution, look forward to passing it. We are seeing so many heroes in our city, in our state, in our country during this incredibly trying time. And the men and women who our nurses really exemplify that so well. So I'm delighted to add my name. I look forward for passage, and I think that among the many heroes out there, it's important that the council recognizes these brave men and women who are literally saving lives every day and putting their own lives at risk as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor O'Malley. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Madam President. I also just wanted to express my deep, deep gratitude. I've heard from so many friends who are in the healthcare industry and nurses about all the levels of service and duty, but also anxiety that they're having to face right now. And so we all need to do our part on the policy side, as Councilor Flynn said, to make sure they have the appropriate equipment, that we're making sure people are each person is doing their part to slow the spread and relieve the burden on them. But most important is to make sure that we are always on record thanking them and recognizing just how much they're doing in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor. We've got to unmute you. Just a second, Carrie.
There we go. Thank you. I'd like to add my name to this resolution. The frontline healthcare professionals, the nurses and doctors are going above and beyond the call of duty in this crisis, and they deserve our full-hearted support, especially in the area of having adequate protective equipment. I'd also like to draw the public's attention to the fact that nurses and frontline workers have access to emergency childcare, that this was enacted just recently, and that there are childcare providers in Boston who are available to help with childcare at no cost. It's been paid for by the state. So I'd like to add my name to this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to add my name. We won't get into a competition with Councilor O'Malley, but certainly I think my district may have the largest number of nurses working in it in the country. And I just really want to lift up the fact that, you know, in a lot of ways, this is, I think there's been a lot of comparisons lately. We use the word frontline for a reason. This is like a wartime situation in a bunch of ways. And I think it's been scary for everyone how quickly that has developed. And I think we have to recognize that there are a lot of people who had a more 9-to-5 job a month ago who are now completely flat out on all of our behalf. And I think just to lift up their courage, recognizing the fact that courage isn't doing something in the absence of fear, right? It's going to that front line despite the fear. And I just think, you know, our frontline healthcare workers are in that situation right now. And in many respects, it's really shame on us that there is as much fear as there is because of the lack of that personal protective equipment. And the fact that, like, we haven't, you know, from an emergency preparedness perspective, nationally and all the way down, set up the kinds of resources that they need right now. And so I think that everything we can do, both to speak on that front and then to just act on that front to get those masks and other critical equipment in the hands of our nurses and healthcare workers is so important. And so I want to commend their courage. I want to recognize the fact that what we are asking these folks to do is scary and unreasonable. And that as with so many frontline workers across our city right now, and that we all have to really be in solidarity in this in this time. So I just want to commend the maker and add my name and say that, you know, in District 8, we have obviously just a ton of people working in this field right now, and also a lot of families that do live in the district where we've got not just one but two healthcare workers at home. And just want to say that they're in my thoughts and prayers constantly. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Hi, yes, President, and thank you to the maker. Am I unmuted? I'm unmuted, right? Okay, I just wanted to thank the maker for, I'd like to add my name to this resolution, and I would also like to lift up the healthcare providers who are low-wage healthcare providers that might not be nurses, but they are personal care attendants. They're the ones who are doing bedside work too, lifting them up in terms of the equipment. But I also think that I'd like to look beyond the COVID-19 crisis and also figure out how we can provide social and emotional and mental health support to our frontline responders who, as a result of this, are going to need a lot of support for overcoming this crisis. And so I just wanted to add that piece to it as well.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you again to the maker on this effort. As you know, I'm sure we've had a small army of sewers making masks for healthcare providers across our city and across our area. And these aren't those Super Duty masks. And it just, to me, we've had, I think, 7,000 requests for masks. And I think that speaks to the need on the front lines, the need on the second line, so that sort of second line of defense, and the real fear and worry, but yet courage, as Councilor Brock mentioned, that our frontline workers have, our medical and healthcare workers, our first responders, and our nurses and doctors and medical professionals across our city during this crisis, during this time of need. So I just want to thank the maker. I want to add my name and just echo the sentiment of all of us that they need to be and continue to be thought of and worried about and cared for. And we continue to support their needs for more of that PPE and to support their needs, I think, in the long term, not too long term, for that social and emotional support that Councilor Mejia mentioned. Please add my name. Thank you to the maker, and looking forward to the other end of this crisis.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak? Yes, the chair recognizes Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the maker, Councilor Flynn, for your leadership here and consistent leadership with respect to supporting those in, particularly not just our nurses and first responders here, but the workers in general. You've put forth resolutions, obviously, in the past with respect to workers in this category, but I wanted to raise up something that has been coming up with respect to nurses in at least our district and our calls, is that many nurses, as we know, are immigrants, and folks that often, when we talk about immigrants and why they're so critical to our economy, to our city, including undocumented immigrants, we're talking about nurses, we're talking about people on the front lines. And so I just wanted to raise that up and add that here because it's essential that we recognize that that's who we're talking about. And so thank you again, Councilor Flynn. I look forward to adding my name, and thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Is anyone else looking? Yes, the chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty.
Obviously, just adding to the chorus of shout outs and also A couple of mentions, obviously, to our friends over at 1199 that represent a lot of our healthcare workers that have asked us to sort of circulate this. So wanted to recognize those efforts and have colleagues do the same. And also maybe a special mention to one of our colleagues in government, State Representative John Santiago, he's been doing phenomenal work. I don't know if folks have been following him on Fox, but here's a guy that's sort of he's an outline of work, doing constituent service work and outreach for his constituents, but also he's wears another hat and he's on the front lines. And so on behalf of all of my colleagues here in the City Council, just want to recognize Representative Santiago's great work and efforts on the front lines over at Boston Medical Center.
Thank you so much. And I think it is Rep. Santiago's birthday today. So happy birthday to you, Rep. Santiago. Anyone else looking to speak? Wonderful. We will go on to adding names. And I know many of you mentioned it, but if we could please, just a show of hands to make it simple. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Mejia, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Baker, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Wu, Councilor Campbell, Councilor O'Malley, and please also add the chair. And thank you, Councilor Flynn, for your amazing work. Councilor Flynn seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0580. All those in favor say aye.
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 Wonderful. Docket 0580 has been adopted. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0581?
Docket 0581, Councilor Arroyo offered the following order for a hearing to audit the implementation of the Invest in Boston ordinance.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Janey. In 2013, the Boston City Council passed by way of veto override the Invest in Boston ordinance. It was authored by Boston City Councilor Felix G. Arroyo. It was supported by Councilor Matt O'Malley and Councilor Frank Baker. The ordinance amended the Municipal Banking Commission and called for responsible banking practices in the city of Boston. Invest in Boston requires that all banks who want any amount of the city of Boston deposits to publicly disclose to the Municipal Banking Commission their banking practices in Boston, including but not limited to mortgage lending, small business lending, hiring, loan modifications, and foreclosure prevention. On any given day, Boston keeps over $1 billion of city funds in its banks. Amongst other provisions in the Invest in Boston Act ordinance, it called on banks to offer loan modifications for up to 6 months for Boston residents who are experiencing loss of income, as many Bostonians are now due to COVID-19. The Invest in Boston ordinance ensured that the Municipal Banking Commission would meet at least twice annually. Those meetings would be public, and all data provided by banks applying for City of Boston funds to be deposited in their institutions would be made public. The full implementation of Invest in Boston from its passage almost 7 years ago would have ensured that banks with the City of Boston, funds as deposits would be willing partners in foreclosure prevention, home and small business loan modifications, and the continued employment of Boston residents. And for reasons that remain unclear, the Invest in Boston ordinance has not been implemented by the City of Boston since its passage in 2013. These would be valuable tools available to the city and instrumental to the management of the economic impacts of the crisis we're currently facing. For those reasons, I am requesting that the appropriate committee of the Boston City Council hold a hearing to discuss and audit the implementation of the Invest in Boston ordinance of 2013, the impact of its implementation or lack thereof, and how the provisions of the Invest in Boston ordinance can help the residents of Boston during the COVID-19 crisis and thereafter.
Thank you so much. I will take speakers now. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to commend the maker for raising this important issue. As some folks know, I sit on the board of the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance, MAHA, which was involved in the drafting of this ordinance back in 2013 and cares quite a lot about its implementation. I will say that there's been some encouraging news on that front recently. I know that MAHA met back in early March, sort of just before we all went virtual, with the city's treasurer, Drew Smith, and learned that the city has been producing linked deposit reports and doing some more of the steps in the ordinance than Maha had realized. However, the sort of public facing aspect of that, of getting that information out to people and helping people know how our different banks with linked deposits are doing hasn't really been there. And I think the opportunity to revive the Municipal Banking Commission that Councilor Arroyo alluded to, and to really, build out the public side of that is important. I'll also add that one of the reasons this is a particular priority for me and for Maha and others is that on the federal level right now, there's a real effort to weaken the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA, which is the sort of federal way of holding banks accountable for their community practices. And so as the federal government backs off of its obligations on that front, it's really important as a city that we step forward. And I think the Invest in Boston Act gives us a lot of tools to do that. But I'll just say that I think it sounds from the report that I got of that March meeting that there is significant work underway, and the next step is really to kind of get to a dashboard, get to a more public process, get to a way for more Bostonians to know which of the banks that we put our money in are really stepping forward in this way. So I'm glad to see the call for a hearing and commend the maker. I would love to add my name. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I wanted to commend the maker and also note that I believe it was 2018, possibly 2019, when I also had filed a hearing order specifically on this and to bring to light the fact that the Boston City Council had made a commitment in 2013, but that we had not fulfilled that commitment as a body by making sure that we have this commission up and running, also assuring that we have public conversations. I think it's timely. I'm excited to be part of making sure that this, that I thought it is groundbreaking legislation that passed in 2013 is come to fruition. I also think it's worth noting that not only do we need to actually make sure that the banks are doing what they're committed to, but that we also talk about what to do with banks who have not. We have already exposed that much of our city funds are not going to many people in Boston or reflect the diversity of Bostonians. And so when we are confronted.
So Councilor Edwards, you just dropped off. Councilor Edwards, the last part of your statement dropped off.
My apologies. I said, I don't know where I left off or where I got dropped off, but again, I just wanted to make sure we had a form of accountability to make sure that we could, as a city, hold the banks accountable who are receiving our funds, who are not complying with the law.
Okay.
And also that we just make the body doing that.
Thank you. Is anyone else looking to speak? The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Please add my name and just commend the maker. I know Clerk Feeney and I remember the original version of this was Bank on Boston, where we would have a report card with respect to whoever wanted to do, whatever banks wanted to do business with the city of Boston, particularly on our depository accounts. And we kept track of how they were performing, who they were lending to, what their practices were they good corporate citizens, et cetera. So this is sort of in the same line at that. It was a very effective and useful tool for us as a city to gauge where we're going to be putting our deposits in. This falls in line with that. So I look forward to an expedited hearing, and we'll look forward to participating. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak to this matter? Anyone else wanting to add their name? Madam Clerk, could you please add Councilor Mejia, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Bach, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Wu, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Campbell, and please also add the chair. Docket 0581 will be referred to the Committee of Post Audit. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0582?
Docket 0582, Councilor Edwards offers the following order. for hearing regarding economic relief and incentives for the restaurant industry and restaurant workers.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Before I start, I would like to move pursuant to Rule 12 to add Councilors Michelle Wu and Councilor Julia Mejia as original co-sponsors.
Seeing and hearing no objections, they've been added.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As a District 1 City Councilor, I am proud to represent, I believe, the greatest concentration of restaurants in the North End. And it is, when that industry is hurting, so is the neighborhood of the North End, and certainly so is the economy of Boston. So today I wanted to start the conversation and the City Council, all the things and all the tools that we can bring together to not only bring back this industry, but also to make sure that when we bring it back, we don't forget about the workers who are also suffering. The fact of the matter is, before COVID-19, a lot of workers who worked in this industry were economically vulnerable. As many people are fully aware, this industry in many cases has sub-minimum wages or tip minimum wages as a standard practice. The tip minimum wage, for those who don't know, in Massachusetts is $4.75. The waiter or waitress is then supposed to get the difference of the minimum wage through tips. That has set a lot of people up for vulnerability, in as much as many of the tips are cash related. And so when that person is now seeking unemployment because they've been laid off, not fired, because we have closed our restaurants, that amount of unemployment is based off of 2/3 of their income, which is based on the tip minimum wage and whatever cash minimum wage that they can remember to, or cash tips that they remember to put in when they file their taxes. Now, that's a big deal for a lot of people. It's very hard. I don't think people are even trying to game the system. And you try to remember what you get on a daily basis in cash and try to average that out for your annual income when you file your taxes. What that means is many people are getting unemployment benefits that are just laughably low and cannot survive off of that. So now we're in a situation to build back this industry as grants, as funding, as relief comes through. And what I'd like for this body to look at is, how do we make sure that we come back and come whole together? We've been approached by ROC, the Restaurant Opportunity Center, and who has been approached by local restaurants who are asking and finally saying they see the light, that this can't continue in terms of restaurant workers getting paid sub-minimum wages. So how can the city help with that? While we cannot pass or change the minimum wage, our body, what we can do is look at the process, and we can incentivize restaurants who are getting relief to either adopt the minimum wage or adopt $15 an hour for their workers. How do you do that? Well, you look at the process that we have right now, our licensing process, the fees, the lines that people have to get in to start a new business. They're burdensome. But if their business is, I believe there's actually only 5 in Boston that pay $15 an hour or the minimum wage for restaurants. Those businesses that when they want to come back, I don't know why we wouldn't put them to the front of the line and help them to move faster, because their economic impact is greater for their workers. And for those restaurants that don't do that, why not incentivize them or offer them an opportunity if they were to commit to paying the minimum wage or $15 an hour, that they would also be able to move faster to the front of the line for liquor licenses, for ISD inspections, for any other process and regulations that a restaurant through right now. Especially
Councillor Edwards, we're losing you. So if you'd like to wrap up your comments.
Regardless of whether they do or don't pay.
Councillor Edwards.
I'm just saying, for those that are willing to commit to a wage and higher standard of protection.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. The chair recognizes Councillor Wu. Councillor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to thank the lead sponsor for agreeing to.
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Wu has the floor. Councillor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. Anyway, want to thank the lead sponsor for her incredible work and advocacy for workers across every industry, and to thank Councilor Mejia. We had come together with the same idea of wanting to support restaurants in general, but also restaurant workers who have been disproportionately hit hard by this pandemic. We know that many of our workers are not eligible for the relief mechanisms that will be available. We know that many of our restaurant owners do not have the credit to take out additional loans, even if more are made available.
I can see them, but I can't.
And anyway, just want to lift up the situation and the voices of this economy and this industry so that we can support them moving forward.
I'm sorry, Councilor Wu, could you please repeat that?
I'm very grateful to be part of this hearing order, and that we need to lift up the voices and situations of these workers moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Wu. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Edwards, for adding me to this hearing order, as well as my colleague, Michelle Wu. I'm really excited to know that based on the resolution that we presented last week, there's a lot of energy and traction and making sure that we're supporting our small businesses, particularly those who have been hit the hardest. As we know, wait staff and cooks make up to 2 of the largest sectors of uninsured workforce, totaling up to 1.1 million uninsured workers as of 2018, according to a Kaiser Family Foundation report. A number of these workers are also undocumented. 45% of all undocumented immigrants in the United States are uninsured. This is not just a risk to their health and safety, but a risk to the health and safety of everyone who comes into contact with these occupations. And according to a survey conducted by the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, most businesses owners who responded to their surveys are opposed to taking out loans, but may have to anyways. This means that not only are businesses owners currently seeing a decrease in profits because of COVID-19, but they would also continue to see a decrease in profits because they would eventually have to pay back these loans with interest. So I was really happy to see a lot of traction around providing grants as opposed to small business low interest loans. The other pieces that I think in terms of an action item is that while COVID-19 outbreak has been devastating businesses and workers alike, this is an opportunity to empower small businesses through contracting and community empowerment. I think that this is an opportunity for us to figure out how the city can employ small businesses to help support and close the gap on some of the food insecurity issues that we're seeing in some of our neighborhoods. So this is going to be an excellent opportunity to really push the city in ways that we haven't seen before. But I agree with my colleagues that the work really begins after this COVID-19, and whatever we do now has the implications for really long-term sustainable outcomes for our small businesses. So thank you to the maker for adding me to this, and looking forward to moving this conversation as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak? Okay, anyone looking to add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Campbell, Councilor O'Malley, and please also add the chair. Docket 0582 will be referred to the Committee on Small Business and Workforce Development. Madam Clerk, if we could move on to docket 0583, that would be great.
Thank you. Docket 0583, Councilor Edwards offers the following order for hearing regarding the creation of a business acquisition and conversion program.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience with my technical difficulties. Can I just confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and the connection is much better. Thank you.
All right, this is with my cell phone, so if I'm reaching up, it's because someone's texting me. I apologize again. But I wanted to introduce this hearing order in order to create a business acquisition and conversion program. Many of us have seen in neighborhood issues that when business owners want to retire, we feel huge loss in our community, mostly not only for the local jobs, but also for what that local business meant as an institution for many, many people as they grew up. It was a place where you can get some credit. You could buy some groceries sometimes if you even didn't have the money. They donated to our local softball teams. They were a rock for many people suffering or dealing with temporary employment loss. This hearing is intended to discuss how the city can support small employers, mom and pops who are transitioning, but who may want to sell their business. I think about Doyle's, I think about some of the institutions that we've lost, and I think that if we had the institutional system built up to allow for the workers to purchase this their business, then we would have been in a better position to save some of those businesses. Right now, many people are unaware that if you sell your business to an ESOP, that's an employee stock ownership program, or to the workers through a co-op, the owner actually can forego paying taxes on that sale. It's a huge windfall for a lot of small owners, but the workers then own the business and they can run it. And I think that we could look to states like Colorado that have already created a revolving loan fund for employee ownership, and that we should consider calling it as well, or creating one as well. The city of Boston already operates a successful acquisition opportunities program to buy deed restricted residential properties. And I'm hopeful we can look at kind of creating the same thing that allow for employees, workers to own the local businesses that they've dedicated their lives to. I really wonder what's going to happen with some of the small businesses when they, after 30 years working there, what will those workers do and where will they go? I don't know that the new Starbucks or large corporation coming in is necessarily going to keep them. So I'm hopeful we can look at grants or loans to support business acquisition. And I think the city's economic mobility lab has already taken initial steps in this direction by organizing technical assistance to providers for co-ops. And I think this is a wonderful addition to that conversation. I hope we can consider that.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak to this matter? Would anyone like to add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Mejia, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Braden, Councilor Bach, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Flynn. Please also add the chair. Councilor Bach, would you like to speak to the matter?
Yeah, if I may, Madam President, just briefly, I just wanted to just commend the maker and say, as many folks know, I gave my maiden speech on cooperative housing. I think that it's so important for those of us in policymaking positions to just think about every way that we can try to tug what is increasingly an economy that's controlled by a very small set of sort of mega corporations towards more of an economic democracy. And I think we're really seeing on the ground what the lack of that looks like right now, and also how vulnerable the aspects of that we do have, right? The small businesses are. And so I just think, to me, you know, I know that in the cooperative community, that alliance between co-op housing and business cooperatives is really important. And I think in general, if the council can make it its business as we rebuild from this crisis to kind of seed the opportunity in government programs and lending practices, et cetera, for there to be more resident ownership of housing and more worker ownership of businesses, we will have a more resilient and equitable economy in the long run. So I just really want to commend the maker.
Thank you so much. Docket 0583 will be referred to the Committee on Small Business and Workforce Development. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0584.
Docket 0584, Councilors Wu and Arroyo offered the following order for a hearing regarding planning for an equitable recovery from the impacts of COVID-19.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We'd like to make a motion to suspend Rule 12 and add Councilor Mejia as an original co-sponsor as well.
Thank you. Seeing and hearing no objections, Councilor Mejia has been added.
Thank you, Madam President. we have talked all meeting and all throughout the last 3 weeks about all the impacts of COVID-19. We all know and are hearing from our constituents that this is way beyond just a public health pandemic. It's really an economic crisis, and it's a situation that has been deepening pre-existing systemic inequities across our city, deepening housing instability, deepening food insecurity, and what we need to do now, even amidst all the uncertainty about what the timeline will be, when the peak of hospitalizations will come, when we'll be able to lift some of these social distancing requirements. What we do know is that in the immediate term, we need to start planning for an equitable recovery. Otherwise, the same communities that have been left out, the same businesses that struggled to get open and face disparities, the same communities that are experiencing public health disparities even prior to COVID will continue to bear disproportionately the costs of this pandemic over the long run. So looking forward to partnering with particularly the two co-sponsors as well as the entire council and making sure that we are right at the forefront of thinking about what comes next and putting in place the actions now to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Janey, and thank you, Councilor Wu. We know that there's deep inequities in our systems that have existed since their creation, and that those systems have impacted those most vulnerable and people of color throughout its history. There's also a very well documented history of crises deepening those inequities and really highlighting the ways in which those inequities harm our communities. As we talk about a recovery, as we talk about the way that the landscape economically has changed for our city and for our country and for our state, it's incredibly important that we stay on top of this, that we really focus in on places where those inequities already existed and do everything in our power to ensure that we're putting a spotlight on ways we can make things more just, more fair, and also make sure that those recoveries are felt in all of our communities and not just some. So thank you, Councilor Wu, for your leadership. Thank you, President Janey.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councilor Wu and Councilor Arroyo. Looking forward to working with you both on moving this very important conversation forward. Just wanted to note that I believe that Boston is resource rich, but coordination poor. During our conversation with teen empowerment earlier this week, one of the things that we identified was the need for easier access to resources. Every community organization in every neighborhood is looking to help. But with so many people engaged in relief, it can be confusing as to where people go to get their needs met. So I think that as we start looking at the relief efforts beyond COVID-19, let's really look at how we can build an infrastructure for sustainable resource sharing. The outbreak of COVID-19 is so much more than a public health concern. It highlights the need to discuss equity in language access, transportation, access to the internet, and so much more. What we have come to realize is that it's great that we have the Google Chromebooks and Comcast has provided free Wi-Fi, but there's still the digital understanding in low-income communities in particular in terms of how you access certain apps is still something that is really a challenge for some folks. So I think that beyond COVID-19, how do we look at making sure that people are not being left out of the digital conversation? This is an opportunity for communities to continue forward and lead with strengths. So much of the conversation is centered around what our communities lack. I think this is an opportunity that we look at how we can lead with an asset-based lens as it relates to the issues that are impacting low-income communities. So as we move ahead with this conversation, I'm really looking for opportunities to uplift the things that we have in our community that is working and not just focus on the things that we don't. So let's figure out how we can do some asset mapping and uplift all of the great resources that already exist in low-income communities. So looking forward to being engaged in the dialogue and hosting a hearing on how we do this work. Thank you, Michelle Wu, for your leadership, and thank you, Councilor Arroyo as well.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to commend the makers. Please add my name, and also to say I think this is going to be a really important spirit for us to be holding the whole FY21 budget process in, which is a process we're going to start next week. Obviously, there will be ways in which that's modified because of the present emergency and something that I've been discussing with all of our council colleagues. But I think, that process is going to be so important. It's going to take on an added importance, not only because, of course, we, still need to figure out a budget for the next year, as always, but because it's really in budgeting for the coming year that we have our first really concrete opportunity as a city to think about how we direct dollars in a way that really promotes that equitable recovery and the possibility of that. So just want to lift up that I look forward to that being a kind of red thread that runs through the whole budget hearing process in the coming months. So.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak to this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor. We've got to get you unmuted, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I would like to say thank you to the makers. One aspect I would like to highlight, and I know I've talked about this before, Councilor Mejia mentioned it, but language access is a critical part of this discussion. Also, part of this discussion should also be the rise we're seeing, especially nationally, hate crimes against Asians. Most of my district city councilors represent a large Asian population, whether it's Chinese or Vietnamese or Korean. But it's also important to make sure that we do a thorough look, review, across our country and city, just to make sure that it's critical that the Asian community know that they're treated with respect and dignity, even though that there've been many cases of discrimination against them. We have to work extra hard to continue to outreach to our Asian neighbors across our city and our country as well. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor. Councilor Braden, okay. Councilor Braden, could you start over?
Start over again.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to commend the makers for this very important hearing order. I feel that we will get through this present crisis, but we need to set our sights high and see it as an opportunity to restructure how we set up systems that we would increase opportunity and allow for more equity in our recovery process. This is a very destabilizing situation that we're in, but I really feel confident that as a council moving forward that we can bring up some proposals that will build resilience and strengthen our community so that we'll be stronger, even stronger the next time we are faced with a crisis like this. Please add my name to this order. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor. Let's make sure you're unmuted. Great. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to applaud the makers, Councilor Wu, Councilor Arroyo, and Councilor Mejia for your leadership here. I know this is something that we've all been talking about in different conversations. Not only is it important to look at the short-term relief for our businesses and workers, particularly in the form of grants and getting those things out in the immediate, but of course the long-term is pivotal. I just wanted to raise up a conversation I had with someone who does a lot of work in my district who said, we cannot continue to postpone prosperity in certain neighborhoods. We've been doing that for far too long. And he was referencing, of course, Mattapan, Dorchester, and Roxbury. And he's exactly right. So this is a catalyst, we hope, another catalyst for us to not only plan, but to get it right. I applaud the makers in using an equity lens and making sure that equity is at the center of this recovery, both in short term and long term. I also wanted to raise up the fact that, you know, many workers we've been talking to are wage workers, of course, who will be most impacted probably by this, but also we've been having a lot of conversations with not only businesses, childcare providers that are closing, but folks that had to remain home because those businesses closed and the effect it's having on their wages as well. So look forward to that being a part of the conversation. And lastly, we know the racial wealth gap. President Janey, obviously you've talked about that quite a bit, and we don't want this pandemic to deepen it. But I think we've known these issues for a really long time. So hopefully this is the last catalyst that we need in order to get it right for certain neighborhoods. Thank you, and I look forward to adding my name.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak to docket 0584? Wonderful. Those who want to add their name, please, a show of hands. And Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Asabi George, if you could add Councilor Braden, Councilor Bach, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Campbell, and please also add the chair. Very important conversation. Look forward to that hearing. Docket 0584 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. We will now move on to personnel orders. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0585?
Docket 0585, Councilor Janey for Councilor Arroyo.
Councilor Arroyo seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0585. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, nay.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and docket 0585 has been passed. We will move on to late files. I'm informed by the clerk that there are two. Obviously, you know, we frown upon late files, but we understand that things are moving quickly and that this crisis requires some urgency. And so in the absence of objection, the items will be added. Seeing and hearing no objections, these two late files.
Madam President, just if not filing an objection, but we need to see them to be able to determine whether we want to object to them or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so as I was saying at the beginning of the meeting, we've had to adapt to new ways of doing our business. We're not in the chamber. Ron's not dropping late files in front of us in the form of paper. The same is true with amendments. So moving forward in the actual meeting, you will receive an email with late files and amendments going forward. I believe these late files have already been emailed. So if you want to take a moment to review your emails, you will see the two matters. One is a resolution and one is a hearing order.
And those emails would have come in through who? That would have came from central staff?
Yes, I believe it was Michelle.
Christine O'Donnell.
Christine O'Donnell, thank you very much. So we'll take just a minute. The cameras are still rolling. Please keep your phones on mute.
It is Michelle Goldberg. Christine O'Donnell, but the late Michelle Goldberg email.
Thank you. So Michelle Goldberg sent it. We'll take just a few minutes to review. Please keep all phones on mute. We'll take one more minute. Kind of taking my cue by what people are doing on the screen. So if you're all set, if you wouldn't mind raising your head and looking up, that would be great. Wonderful. I think we are ready to go. And so these two late file matters have been added to our agenda, and the chair recognizes Councillor, wait, we have to have them read into the record. Madam Clerk.
And Madam President, you would like me to read these late files in their entirety?
Yes, please, if you could.
Thank you. Thank you. Offered by City Councilor Lydia Edwards. Order for hearing regarding the creation of temporary rental assistance to support residents impacted by COVID-19. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated housing security for many Bostonians, and whereas the city could provide immediate relief through short-term emergency rental assistance, targeting residents who have lost income due to COVID-19, and whereas in February, the Walsh administration recommended 40 projects totaling over $24 million for Community Preservation Act funding. And whereas $8 million are dedicated to citywide housing programs, with $4 million proposed for the acquisition opportunities of programs and $4 million proposed for One Plus Boston program. And whereas communities including Georgetown, Gloucester, Somerville, Waltham, Martha's Vineyard have issued CPA for rental assistance, and whereas the Massachusetts Housing Partnership has recently issued recommendations for utilizing Community Preservation Act funds for rental assistance, and whereas the City of Boston has already indicated its intent to move forward with long-term city rental subsidy programs, therefore be it ordered that the appropriate committee of the Boston City Council hold a hearing to discuss an emergency rental assistance program and to discuss other rental subsidy programs as appropriate. Filed in the City Council on Wednesday, March 1st, 2020.
So I will just note that the date today is April 1st. The chair recognizes Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Again, I'm just confirming you can hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I apologize for the earlier technical difficulties. This is an attempt to really just align our resources with the urgency of now. As mentioned, we have about $24 million to go out in CPA funds, $8 million of which is going back to the city for already proven resources and successful programs such as our AOP program, Acquisition Opportunity Program, and also down payment assistance. Now, I fully support those programs, and in any other regular time, I would want them fully funded, if not getting more funds. But I think giving each $4 million right now so that one day in the future, some people could apply for them while we're dealing with people who are struggling to pay rent makes little sense to me. What I think we could do is take a portion, not all of it, and as, for example, $2 million, $1 million from each of those pots to set up a temporary rent assistance. And I use that on purpose. It is not a voucher program. It is meant to be a bridge over troubled waters, literally, for a couple months that allows people to possibly get a $1,000 check for 2 months, so $2,000 total. That money could go to a small owner-occupied landlord. That person could ultimately use that and commit to a couple things to protect their tenants such as not to evict them within the year, such as not to raise their rents within the year. And whatever difference between the $1,000 and their original rent, that the landlord would commit to allowing the person to pay over some time without interest. Essentially, we're trying to get to the population of people who cannot and do not qualify for vouchers or federal assistance, who, because they were making too much money, ironically, literally before they were let go. So here we are with a large population of people who just need a little bit of plug in their, I guess, boats that are leaking funds right now. And I think this would be a wonderful way to do that. I think there's two conversations that really need to happen. That's the design of the program and then where the funding comes from. I hope that my colleagues will vote for this, even though some may not agree that it should come from CPA funds, that they ultimately do agree first that we should have a temporary rent assistance and that if there are funds available, we should use it immediately to help Bostonians. And then the second debate is where the funds could come from. My proposal is CPA funds already segregated, already ready to go, and actually going back to the city. I think that that's a wonderful opportunity. It's a lot of flexibility, and we have not allocated those funds. We have not had our formal vote yet. So I hope that we can get this up and running as soon as possible and get the relief to as many Bostonians as soon as possible. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Can I get good at this eventually? Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, I think Councilor Edwards has well identified the kind of two components of this hearing order. And I want to start by saying I think we absolutely need emergency rental assistance right now for those folks who are at real risk because of this situation. And that needs to be, it needs to be tailored, it needs to be targeted, and it needs to come fast. And I commend the maker for kind of the sense of urgency here around this issue. I mean, here we are on April 1st. And I think all of us as counselors, we're getting those calls. We also know, and this has been alluded to throughout the meeting, that there are certain populations for whom unemployment and the federal relief is not going to work. It's not going to be what, like, the raft that they need, right? And so I think we've got to be looking as a city for ways to move into that gap quickly and expeditiously. And I totally agree with the counselor on that. And I think that's very much the conversation of the moment. And so I certainly want to add my name to the hearing order. I will say that I feel strongly that we should not be using these CPA funds that my colleague has identified for this purpose. That's for a couple of reasons. One is that procedurally, just in terms of authorization, while we, the council, vote to confirm CPC awards, we don't sort of have the right to just override. So we would need to reconvene the CPC, have them undo the awards they've made, et cetera. So there's a process thing there. And I only raise that because I think that the point here is to be expeditious. So I think that adds another hurdle, but that's not really the chief reason why I don't think CPA is and specifically these already assigned CPA funds is the source here. One, we've just been talking in other issues in this meeting about the need for an equitable recovery. And I think that, there's a real risk on the other side of this thing that people with a lot of money are the ones who kind of swoop in and grab distressed assets. And I think when we think about having an equitable recovery, one of the things we absolutely need is a fully funded AOP program and a fully funded first-time homebuyers program that allows people to move in very quickly to access those. And so I think that while I know that the counselor's intention is to make those pools whole, my instinct is that this is a crisis that's showing us that we need to be spending more of our city budget overall on housing. And so when we identify this critical need, we should be identifying new sources for that purpose, not sort of just using the ones that we already have. I think the good thing is that based on my conversations over the last 24 hours with our chief of housing, Sheila Dillon, I think there are funds that can be immediately freed up within the D&D portfolio that won't involve unrolling the CPA awards. And so I think that's the direction we should move. So I just wanted to speak on this matter to both really commend Councilor Edwards for, bringing this to the council and sort of pushing the urgency with which we need to act on this, but also to say that I think that we can act on this urgently without reducing the CPA awards to those two citywide programs. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Obviously, as the chair of the CPA committee, I I commend the spirit and efforts of our colleague. I'm going to not sign on at this point. I just want to caution a couple of things. One, that I think there's a sort of an expectation from some folks that have been in the process that they're about to receive funds. So I just want to make sure that we're managing those expectations. But also, it's governed by state law, and so I just not sure what, if any, implications this could have on the CPA law. So that said, clearly moving forward with respect to those that'll be applying for the next round of funding. I think obviously we're in a new day and we're going to be looking at a lot of things with a different lens, particularly as the previous speaker, as chair of Ways and Means, as we're starting to go through that budget process. I think when she met with all of us a few weeks ago, we all had a wish list and we had lots of stuff that we were anticipating being included. And I think that that day has changed. And so we're going to be looking at everything differently. My only concern here is that folks that sort of they've got an expectation that they're receiving these funds and then to sort of deviate given the crisis, I just would be cautious about that. But again, understanding that we're all in this together, and I appreciate the spirit and the intention of the maker. And obviously we would look forward to participating in the hearing if we have one held. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak to this matter? Would folks like to add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Mejia, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Bach, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Braden, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Campbell, and please also add the chair. This late file matter will be referred to the Committee on Housing and Community Development. And now we will move on to the second late file matter, which is a resolution by Councilor Edwards. Madam Clerk, if you could please read the matter into the record.
Sponsored by Councilor Lydia Edwards in the City Council, a resolution urging the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to lift the ban on blood donation. Whereas, and I'm so sorry, this is very small print, whereas blood donation is necessary for the health and recovery of patients across the United States and world, supporting medical treatment for infants, children, adults, and the elderly, cancer patients, and victims of car accidents, violence, and other traumatic injuries. And whereas between 1983 and 2015, the United States Food and Drug Administration, known as the FDA, imposed a lifetime ban on blood donations on men who have sex with other men, MSM. And whereas in 2015, the FDA revised the policy to a 12-month blood donation deferral for MSM, and whereas critics of the original ban and 2015 policy have noted that the policies are not based in empirical studies and are inconsistent with the allowable blood donation by heterosexual individuals with multiple partners. Whereas, regardless of who is donating, donated blood is tested for infectious diseases. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has caused the cancellation of thousands of blood drives, and whereas in 2014, a report from UCLA School of Law's Williams Institute estimates that eliminating the 12-month deferral period for MSM would make an extra 600,000 pints of blood available per year. Whereas the ban on blood donations by MSM individuals indiscriminatory and harmful to society, now therefore be it resolved that the Boston City Council calls upon the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to suspend the 2015 policy and ensure any restriction on blood donations is based in science and non-discriminatory. Filed in the City Council, Well, this says April 8th, but it's April 1st, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It is timely to discuss this continued discrimination against many members of our community. People who are my friends and family members who identify as gay men, particularly who this discrimination is targeted towards, who are willing to shed blood for this country, fight in our military, teach in our schools, serve on our cabinet in the city of Boston, fight for our veterans for the city of Boston. These men who have the bravery to love who they need and want to love and be with. I find it offensive still that is even in existence, that we have this ban, that we assume in any way, shape, or form that a man who loves a man, who has sex with a man, is somehow less healthier, less patriotic, and less than, period. It's discriminatory, it's wrong, and I hope that all my colleagues will join with me in calling on the FDA to just end all bans that have to do with men having sex with men, gay men, any form of sexuality being a test for whether you should give blood, and to support our hospitals, our infants, our cancer patients. I just find it deeply offensive, and as Governor Baker was calling for more people to give blood, I couldn't help but be slightly angered at the thought that many people who would give blood are told that they shouldn't, simply because of who they love. So I ask that I would like to suspend the rules, and I ask that all my colleagues support this resolution and pass unanimously. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Councillor Edwards, for leading this resolution. A few weeks ago, my team and I were talking about donating blood and the importance now, given the epidemic. And that was the first time that I had heard that some of the members of my team would not be able to donate blood as a result of this very same issue that Councillor Edwards has just brought up. And that was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was flabbergasted to hear that. I think what I have come to realize since then is also the stigma, the added stigma that continues to impact the LGBT community when things like this are still being discussed in terms of who can donate blood, because at the end of the day, we all bleed the same. There's no reason for us to be able to discriminate against who has the right to donate blood and who has not. So I am in full support of this resolution and call upon all of us to even consider donating blood during this time, because from what I also understand, my staff has also brought to my attention that communities of color, there is a high need for blood donations, specifically during the summer months when we experience a lot of violence. So I think that the blood supply is in demand, and we should uplift this as an issue that we should all care about and fight for. So please sign my name to this resolution, and let's continue to have the conversation around this particular issue.
Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty.
Is that my name, Madam President?
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
I would just like to commend Councilor Edwards for her leadership in bringing forward this resolution. This is deeply offensive to me. I believe it's deeply offensive to the rest of this council that these bans even exist in the first place. And so I look forward to seeing the day when they are taken away and that they are struck away, but we should make no mistake of raising our voices collectively and unanimously against these kinds of prejudices and these kinds of bans. They are offensive to me, they're offensive to our residents, they're offensive to our communities, and they have no place in America.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor. Councilor, did you want to speak?
Thank you. I just want to thank the maker on this. And as a regular blood donor, and during this time when there are a number of restrictions in place, we need to be looking for ways to limit those restrictions and increase the amount of blood, because we do know during this crisis and during any time of crisis, blood donations go way down. So being able to expand to include all so that they're able to donate is really important. I also ask that my name be added. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor. Let's make sure you're unmuted.
Thank you, Madam President. Please add my name to this resolution. The fact that this law is, or this regulation is on the books is a travesty in this day and age when it flies in the face of all the prevailing evidence that this is not an issue that can't be addressed with testing and ensuring that no one with an infectious disease, that the blood from infected disease blood is not allowed into our stock. So I think it's long past time that this should be taken off the rules, and please add my name. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I also view this as a civil rights and a human rights issue. Please add my name. It's also about treating everybody with respect and dignity, and that's what we're about in our city. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak? Would anyone like to add their name? Show of hands. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Baker, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Wu, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Flynn, and Councilor Campbell. No one else looking to speak? And please also add the chair, Madam Clerk. If no one else is looking to speak, we will move on. Great. Councilor Edwards seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the resolution has been adopted.
Point of order, Madam President.
Yes.
Just to ask for reconsideration on the previous docket. I believe it was assigned to housing. I know a portion of the topic is rental assistance, but I think the crux, or at least the avenue, would be through CPA, Community Preservation Act, and the specific ask, I think, in the whereas was alluded to 8 million of the 24 potentially being used for that. So just want consideration to see whether or not it could be assigned to the Committee on the Community Preservation Act, knowing that we have 3 very important hearings coming up on the disbursement of those funds. So it seems to be more than appropriate that it be in that committee, but I'll defer it to the chair.
Thank you for that, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think the reason why I set it up and discussed that there's 2 real issues. One is the setting up of the program, and 2, where the money comes from. The crux, so for example, if we do not get CPA funding, I still want this program. So I would, if it was only dependent on CPA and the only way we could have this is through CPA, I absolutely understand my colleagues' argument for it to be in the CPA committee. But this is about setting up the rental assistance program. And I thought in my comments, I made that clear. I do not think it should go to CPA, because if it does or doesn't happen with CPA funds, this program should still come about, I believe. And I think majority of my colleagues do think that including Chief Dillon, does think that there should be ways in which we set this program up. And so it was inspired by the CPA money going to the city, but I do believe the goal is to set up a temporary rental assistance. So I would like it to stay in the housing and community development.
Thank you for that, Councilor Edwards. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty.
And I'll withdraw the request based on that explanation, just given that once we have the hearings, those funds will probably be, would be approved. But given that there's the broader issue of setting up the overall program, that's completely different. So withdraw my request to have it reassigned. Thank you,
I
Madam President.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. And just to bring people back to where we are at this current adoption, I mean, the current resolution that we're looking to adopt, if we're all ready. All right, Councilor Edwards seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Nay, the ayes have it, and the resolution has been adopted. Now we've done that. We're moving on to green sheets. Anyone looking to raise, thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have
Thank Thank you very much, Madam President. I would like to pull docket 0559, which is currently in the Housing Committee. This is a resolution filed by Councilor Arroyo requesting a moratorium on rent, mortgages, evictions, and foreclosures in the city of Boston. And I will wait for that before I have any other comments.
Yep, so it's on page 6 of 13. If you don't have your green sheets right in front of you, an email has been sent so that you can follow along. And I will give us time to review or get to the green sheets through our emails. Okay. I think we are good. So I'm going to ask our clerk to read it into the record. Madam Clerk, could you please read the docket? Docket 0559.
Thank you, Madam President. On the green sheet on page 6 of 13, in the Committee on Housing and Community Development, docket number 0559, sponsored by Councilor Arroyo, a resolution requesting a moratorium on rent, mortgages, evictions, and foreclosures in the city of Boston to provide housing security in light of COVID-19 outbreak. This was reported to committee on March 25th, 2020.
Thank you so much. And Madam Clerk, could you please poll the Committee on Housing and Community Development?
Thank you, Madam President. On the Committee on Housing and Community Development, Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Baker. Councilor Braden. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Is that Councilor Flynn? I'm sorry.
Yes, Councilor Flynn, yes.
Great. Councilor Braden?
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. And Councilor Baker?
Yes.
So, thank you. Madam President, it was a unanimous consent to.
Yes, too. Did she get me?
Nope, Mahia, not yet. Not yet. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
We are polling the Committee on Housing and Community Development so that it is now, this matter, docket 0559, is properly before the body.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. The matter is now properly before the body. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The COVID-19 pandemic has paused the economy and created financial insecurity for many Bostonians. This resolution is a call for many of the institutional stakeholders to rise to the occasion and provide relief for renters and for landlords and those who hold mortgages. What I believe firmly is that this is not a call for people to stop paying rent, and it is not a call for people to stop paying their mortgages. And there has been some confusion out there. We are encouraging people to continue to do what they can do. But when it comes to the institutions, this resolution is asking and calling on them to do even more. So I want to turn this over to the original sponsor, Madam President, of this resolution, for him to speak on the matter. And of course, anyone else as you are inclined to allow to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will call upon the lead sponsor. We did have a lot of discussion at the last meeting, so I'm hopeful that we can keep the discussion to a minimum. This is a very important issue. At this time, the chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo, the lead sponsor of this resolution. Thank you so much, Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, President Janey, and thank you, Councilor Edwards. A rent, mortgage, foreclosure, and eviction moratorium is possible. There are examples growing by the day around the country. States like California, New York, Maryland, Indiana, Kentucky, Washington, Arizona, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and others have all acted where Massachusetts has not. At this moment, there are no statewide moratoriums in place that cover all residents, not a single one. And though House and Court has continued all eviction hearings to a future date, and some protections have been offered in Boston and the state for very specific residents, Today, you can still file eviction proceedings as before, and we know that many residents do not even make it to housing court before complying with an eviction request. These much needed moratoriums are not within our power as counselors to institute, but the power to institute them does exist, and it is well within our power as a body to advocate for a rent, mortgage, eviction, and foreclosure moratorium, and in fact is the least we can do at a time when so many of our residents are at risk of losing their housing and businesses. The advocacy for these much needed reforms does not end here with a resolution. It continues in the pressure we apply individually and collectively as a body upon our lawmakers and our governor to act with the urgency this crisis requires, and to ensure that no one loses their housing or business for doing their part to stem the spread of COVID-19 and by following the directives of government and public health officials. We have heard that these kind of moratoriums are unnecessary because banks and individuals can work these things out amongst themselves, but the evidence says otherwise. This month, GTI Properties in Boston did an exemplary thing. They waived April rents on dozens of retail, restaurant, and art gallery tenants in buildings they own in the South End. That cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet when they turned to their lender, a national bank, to defer their principal payments and just cover the interest on their mortgage, they received a flat no. Already, my office has been made aware of landlords who have requested rent increases for the month of May, and banks that have failed to offer or respond to requests for mortgage relief. As our secure in place is extended to May 4th, it is important to understand that such a date, just like April 7th, was and is a moving target, a placeholder that could take longer. A return to normal, if we wish to call it that, will be far from normal. Today, there are residents who have lost their incomes, not for anything they did, but because of decisions our government has made. There are residents currently not eligible for unemployment assistance at all. There are businesses that have anchored each of our communities, whose owners have poured their lives into making successful, are now closed by government directive, who will never open their doors again. And there are residents who are living in fear of the day our housing courts can once again open theirs. The cost to our communities is tragic, and with state and federal intervention can be avoidable. As we ask others to do the most that they can do, it is incumbent upon us to do the most that we can do. I ask that you please support docket 0559, requesting a moratorium on rent, mortgages, evictions, and foreclosures. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Arroyo. Are there others looking to speak? I know there was a lot of discussion last week. If not, we can move on. Okay, seeing and hearing no others.
I would like to speak, Madam President.
Madam President, I have my arm raised. I've got a couple friendly amendments, Madam President. So I'd like to obviously commend the maker in his efforts. I'm offering 3 friendly amendments, which I believe at this time central staff will, according to the rules, will have to circulate. But so as that's happening, I'd like to acknowledge that this is a tremendously stressful time for all of our residents, particularly our most vulnerable residents, which is why I supported this resolution last week and commend the efforts of the maker. But since last week, obviously my team and I'm sure many of my colleagues and their teams are fielding calls from renters, small property owners, business owners, you name it, about the resolution and ways we could enhance it and make it better, given that we've had a week to think about it. And as elected officials, we know our residents well, and we should obviously be driving the bus here, as referenced by the lead sponsor in terms of other municipalities in other states that have acted. So, and in light of the fact that over 60% of Boston's residents are renters, and some of those renters are experiencing incredible difficult hardship, and will continue to experience that as this pandemic continues. We also, at the same time, recognize that many of our neighborhoods, Dorchester alone, where almost 40% of the homes are 2- and 3-family homes, where they depend on the rental income to pay the mortgages. So it's a complex issue. Given its urgency, we're not able to sort of have a full-blown hearing and to bring in a diversity of opinions. But since we'll be voting on this today, I have introduced the ability to pay clause that the lead sponsor and I have been in discussions about, as well as sort of a sunset clause. And so in light of that, if folks have an opportunity just to take a quick look at the 3 friendly amendments, would like to, we can obviously vote on them one at a time. But so through the chair, however, you or the chair of the committee would like.
Excuse me, Councilor Flaherty, would you just like to, so I want to give us time to look at the amendments, and then we'll definitely take them one by one. So I don't know if you want to speak to the amendments and then we'll go look.
Sure.
That would be.
So the first amendment is after the whereases, there'll be a final whereas. There'll be actually 2 additional whereases and then the resolved. And so the second to last whereas would be, whereas a suspension on rent, mortgage payments, evictions, and foreclosures shall apply during the national, state, and local emergency period if the property owner or tenant is able to provide documentation about an inability to pay their mortgage or rent due to circumstances related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The next whereas would read as follows. Whereas nothing in this resolution shall be construed to mean that the property owner or tenant will still not be obligated to pay lawfully charged rent or mortgage payments if they do not demonstrate a documented loss of income as a result of COVID-19. And the third amendment would obviously be in the resolve that the Boston City Council requests that the federal government and or Commonwealth of Mass and or City of Boston use the powers vested within them to issue an immediate moratorium on rent, mortgage payments, evictions, and foreclosures for those that are eligible for a period of 90 days with the option to renew on a quarterly basis until the end of the national, state, and local emergency. And again, those are two friendly whereases and a friendly resolve in the effort to hopefully get all 13 of us to get this up to Beacon Hill where folks out there need much needed relief. As the lead sponsor indicated, that things are happening at a fast level, things are happening in other states. We had an opportunity to sort of take a look at this and maybe sharpen it up a little bit, and my hope is that it'll be received as such.
Wonderful. So what we're going to do now, folks, is we're going to take a little pause so that we can look at the language in our email, the amendments, and then we're going to vote on each amendment. Councilor Baker, did you have a question regarding that?
I would like to make a statement.
Okay, so right now we're going to pause and look at the amendments. We're going to vote on the amendments. Everyone who wants to speak will have an opportunity. Did you want to speak to one of these amendments? We're going to do that when we open the floor back up, but right now we're going to pause and look at the amendments.
I'll wait till we open the floor up.
All right, so we'll take a few minutes so that people can look at their email. How are folks doing? Are folks ready? So we're going to take each amendment one by one. Madam Clerk, do you need to read this amendment into the record?
Council Flaherty did, but I'd be happy to, Madam President.
Thank you, I appreciate you.
So, amendment number 1 to docket 0559 offered by Councilor Flaherty. Whereas a suspension on rent, mortgage payments, evictions, and foreclosures shall apply during the national, state, and local emergency period if the property owner or tenant is able to provide documentation about the inability to pay their mortgage or rent due to the circumstances related to COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, so that is the amendment that is being offered by Councilor Flaherty. It needs to be seconded. Councilor Arroyo?
President, my understanding is that the friendly amendments as offered to the maker, if the maker chooses to accept them as a friendly amendment, there is no vote required. But
So, let me just clarify, there's, yeah, no,
Yes.
so,
He's correct.
yeah, but so how do you feel about that?
So the first one was the First Amendment.
Yeah.
I can't accept that as a friendly amendment because it makes it harder for folks to prove eligibility. Make cash payments or housekeeping, for instance, and getting paid in cash. How would they prove their loss of income? Folks who aren't eligible for unemployment right now, how would they prove a loss of income? If you're a landlord, how would you prove that your tenant can't pay you because of COVID and not for some other reason?
So, excuse me, Councilor Arroyo. So the amendment has to be seconded. Before we even have this discussion about the amendment to prepare for a vote, it has to be seconded to get on the floor, to be properly before the body.
Second.
Make sure we don't skip that process. Okay, so we have a second from Councilor Baker. Now it's on the floor for discussion. Councilor Arroyo?
So I do not accept Amendment 1 as a friendly amendment. I believe it's on the floor now for a vote.
Yes. Would anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Okay, we will go ahead with a vote then. And Madam Clerk, I think we'll do this with the roll call, if you will call the roll.
Councilor Arroyo.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Councilor Arroyo.
No.
Councilor Arroyo, no. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Bach. Councilor Braden.
No.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, that was a no for me too. I was muted.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Campbell.
No.
Councilor Campbell, no. Councilor Braden and Councilor Bach, no. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey.
No.
Councilor Janey, no. Councilor Mejia.
No.
Councilor Mejia, no. Councilor O'Malley.
No.
Councilor O'Malley, no. And Councilor Wu.
No.
Councilor Wu, no. The First Amendment fails with an 8-4 vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If you could please read the Second Amendment, just so that it is on the floor. And then this amendment is also being offered by Councilor Flaherty. It will have to be seconded once you read it, but we're going to read it first.
Thank you. Amendment 2 to docket number 0559, offered by Councilor Flaherty. Whereas nothing in this resolution shall be construed to mean that the property owner or tenant will still not be obligated to pay lawfully charged rent or mortgage payments if they do not demonstrate a documented loss of income as a result of COVID-19.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo.
President Janey, thank you. I cannot accept this as offered. It creates another barrier to relief when we should be creating less barriers to relief. And for those reasons, I cannot second this. I cannot accept this.
Okay. Any other colleagues looking to speak about the matter? Okay.
Oh, wait, may I speak?
Yes, the chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that as from my perspective, the resolution that's been offered by Councilor Arroyo, it's designed to express the sense of the council around the urgency of these matters and the linkage between the need for mortgage relief and rental relief at this time. We're in the resolution calling on, government at every level, federal, state, and local, to figure out programmatic ways to do this. And it seems to me that in any of those actual steps that would operationalize something like that, there would obviously be constraints and some kind of guidepost, the same way that we were just discussing with the temporary rental assistance with Councilor Edwards's order. But I guess the constraints that are being offered here in the amendments seem to me like the type of constraints you would put on an ordinance or a legislative action, but I don't think that that they're necessary for the purposes of the sense of the meeting resolution that we're considering. So I just wanted to explain why I'm voting no on them.
Wonderful. Is anyone else looking to speak, or are we ready to take it to a vote?
Madam President,
Yes.
I do not have a vote from Councilor Edwards on that first or second amendment.
Well, we're still on the Second Amendment now.
I don't know whether she just couldn't be heard. I just want to raise that issue, that I do not have a vote for the first or second amendment. And that's the only person that did not register yes or no. So I just wanted to document that, that's all. She may have spoken, but we may not have heard her. That's why I just wanted to alert you to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If my colleagues wouldn't mind, Councilor Edwards, I see that you're here on board. We are now talking about the First Amendment. We already took a vote. Your vote wasn't registered. Would you like to go on the record?
I vote against. I don't vote for it.
So that was a no from Councilor Edwards. Madam Clerk, thank you for that. We are now, just for clarity's sake, we are on the second resolution. We just heard from Councilor Bach. I wonder if there are other speakers or if we're ready to move on for the vote. Okay, it looks like we're ready for the vote. Madam Clerk, we'll do this through roll call, if you would call the roll. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Arroyo?
No.
No. Councilor Baker?
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Bach?
No.
Councilor Bach, no. Councilor Braden?
No.
Councilor Braden, no. Councilor Campbell?
No.
Councilor Campbell, no. Councilor Edwards?
No.
Councilor Edwards, no. Councilor Asabi George?
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty?
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn?
No.
Councilor Flynn, no. Whoops, sorry, wait a minute. Councilor Janey?
No.
Councilor Janey, no. Councilor Mejia?
No.
Councilor Mejia, no. Councilor O'Malley?
No.
Councilor O'Malley, no. And Councilor Wu?
No.
Councilor Wu, no. So there is 1, 2, 3. So there are 10 in, no, I'm sorry. There are 9 against the amendment and 4 for the amendment, and the second amendment fails.
Thank you so much. We will move on to the Third Amendment. Madam Clerk, if you could please read it in, and then it will need a second to be on the floor.
Thank you. Amendment 3 to docket 0559, offered by Councilor Flaherty. Strike the phrase "for an indefinite period of time until the end of COVID-19 pandemic," and in its place insert the following phrase: for those that are eligible for a period of 90 days with the option to renew on a quarterly basis until the end of the national, state, and local emergency. The amendment, be it resolved, would read as such. Be it resolved that the Boston City Council requests that the federal government and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and/or the City of Boston use the powers vested within them to issue a moratorium on rent, mortgage payments, evictions, foreclosures for those who are eligible for a period of 90 days, with the option to renew on a quarterly basis until the end of the national, state, and local emergency.
Is there a second for this amendment?
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, President Janey. I'd just like to thank Councilor Bach for expressing my feelings on this. Well said. I can't accept this friendly amendment either because it includes eligibility language.
Any other colleagues looking to speak?
Yes, through the chair,
The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty.
yeah, that was just, that language that was there was approved by the maker. I had communicated that.
If I can speak to that, President Janey.
Chair recognizes, yes, Councilor Royal.
There was discussion about a sunset clause, which in its essence is not a bad idea. The issue here is that the sample sent to me and the sample that was presented to the council currently includes eligibility, those that are eligible. That language was not in the amendment that was sent to me. And because of that, I can't support this one, which includes eligibility language, which would be an issue, frankly, for me.
The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Madam President, I would like to propose an amendment to the amendment on the table where we would strike for those that are eligible, such that the amendment on the floor would then read evictions and foreclosures for a period of 90 days with the option to renew, continuing. That's a motion I would like to make.
Second.
I'd accept that.
So,
My apologies, my home phone was ringing. So I had to unplug it. So I'm sorry, there was an amendment to the amendment, is that where we are?
Yes, amendment to the amendment, and Councilor O'Malley seconded, and I think the proposal.
But amendments still have to be put on the floor in writing, so that's the challenge that we have. So we're gonna have to do another little email pause so that all colleagues can have it before them. I'm gonna ask that we take a little pause. And Councilor Bach.
I don't know whether through the Madam President, through the clerk, if it was accepted by I accepted it. So if that helps us.
Yeah, I think the issue here is making sure that everyone is clear about what has just been accepted and making sure that matters are properly before the body. And so I just want to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and that this friendly amendment to the amendment is before the body. So I'm going to ask that we follow the procedures that we put out around getting that to everyone. If you could get that to Christine, Councilor Brock, that would be helpful. So we'll take a little pause while the amendment to the amendment gets to Christine. Yes.
And/or the City of Boston use the powers vested within them to issue a moratorium on rent, mortgage payments, evictions, and foreclosures for a period of 90 days, with the option to renew on a quarterly basis until the end of the national, state, and local emergency. So the only word that was removed are for those that are eligible. Those are the words that were removed from the Third Amendment.
Wonderful. And I just, great. Is there a second on that? I'm sorry, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Wonderful. Any discussion on that? The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Is your hand up? I see your blue hand.
Oh, sorry, that was from before, but I'll just say that I think that doing this would be making this alteration to the resolution to speak would be consistent with the overall mode that we've been operating in a host of fronts of kind of, like setting dates and then waiting to see what's going to happen.
Wonderful. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
I accept Councilor Bach's friendly amendment.
And any other discussion? With the exception of so you accept it, then no need for a vote on this, people?
I accept Councilor Bach's friendly suggestion, friendly amendment.
So are we good to vote on, wait, we're not good to vote yet. There's more discussion. Now that we're done with amendments, there's more discussion on the resolution itself, okay? So I want to open the floor. I know that Councilor Baker wanted to get in. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you. The resolution offered today by Councilor Royal that we are debating, though may be well-intentioned, is flawed and needs to be amended if it is to pass today. For we must be stewards and trusted advocates for our city, to send the right message to our constituents and have powers that be as it relates to actions they must be taken to ensure public health and safety, and in the financial health and safety of our constituents and the city of Boston. Now, what does that mean? It means calling for prescriptive actions by the proper authorities to protect all of our constituents that have been impacted by the coronavirus. Renters, mortgage holders, and homeowners and landlords, for that matter, telling everyone they shouldn't have to pay rent on their mortgage indefinitely, and regardless of whether they have been financially impacted or not to the COVID virus, would be reckless and could be catastrophic for the people that are not protected by government actions being taken for those who have. So then again, we need to be prescriptive. That's why I plan to offer the amendments, and I won't even get into any of my amendments. They state what the city and state executives have done in their powers. They state what the U.S. Congress, federal government have done within their powers. The CARE Act, the federal relief package that includes significant protections for our constituents. What the courts have done to protect their renters. And finally, what gaps in coverage and protection still exist, and what the state legislature must do to close the gaps on protections needed for our constituents impacted by COVID. Now, I understand that the state legislature is moving on a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures statewide tomorrow. While that is important and critical for relief, I believe this resolution must request that coverage be retroactive to today, April 1st, when rent and mortgage payments for most people are due, since the Baker administration ordered began in mid-March. Furthermore, my amendments also call on state legislatures to pay legislation to mandate forbearance so that banks and mortgage companies don't try to hit consumers with balloon payments when the emergency order is lifted. So it is my hope that today we seriously consider the message we are sending to the powers that be in the public with this resolution, calling on the proper parties of authority to act in a swift and prescriptive way so that renters and homeowners impacted by the COVID virus crisis are protected, and that our economy is as ready as it can be to rebound when we get through this crisis. Thank you, Madam President. We call for transparency and accountability, and that's what I was trying to do with this.
Thank you so much.
So to tell people, I'm not done. So to tell people they do not have to pay their rent is a dangerous message to send. The author said in print, we cannot enact this. We need to lead now and not mislead our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else looking to speak on the resolution? The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
I do want to reiterate, I'm planning to vote in support of this resolution today, and I think we're all hearing the sense of crisis and pressure from folks on both homeowners and renters in this moment. I do think it's important for us to reiterate to those who are watching and paying attention that as Councilor Arroyo has alluded to, as Councilor Baker has alluded to, our vote for this resolution today does not enact a rent freeze. That's beyond the power of the Boston City Council. And so I just think it's important for us to say that this is a non-binding resolution. I think we have a really important role at sort of the role of the bully pulpit here on the council to talk about the kind of swift action that we think we need to make at every level of government. But I think, you know, to Councilor Baker's point, it's important for people to understand that this body is not through this resolution able to enact a freeze on rents, and that's not or on mortgage payments, and that all of the efforts that are being made need to continue to be made at every level, both to talk to banks, to talk to landlords, and to look for relief at the federal, state, and local levels with funding. So I really want to reiterate that because I know that folks are watching at home, and I think it's important that we be getting out accurate information on that front.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Well, that's what I'm talking about there, Madam Chair. This is a message. The Herald's line tomorrow is going to be rent moratorium in City of Boston. City Council calls for rent moratorium. We do not have the power of the authority. My concern is with the consumer that does not understand that. So if they do not pay their rent or mortgage without going through the proper channels, we could potentially destroy people's lives, people's credit scores. This is dangerous. This is a dangerous message to send, especially when we know we cannot enact it. And for the way that I've been treated by my colleague here, because I wanted transparency, and accountability, which is what you said 3 times at the beginning, transparency and accountability. For the way that I was treated for this here, I'm gonna stop talking there, but wrong message. Herald will be City Council calls for moratorium on the rent. We do not have that power.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And obviously, I appreciate the comments of the previous speaker. And also, Councilor Bach sort of just really framed that, which is why I'll support it through the chair to the maker. If he would consider a means test, just like all other cities and towns are doing across the country, really in response to the previous speaker's concerns. End of the day for me, I want folks to know that today's April 1st. If you're a renter and or a landlord and you have the ability to pay, we're employing you to do just that, because in the end, that will actually help those that are struggling and that don't have the ability to pay. So there are a lot of folks out there, city workers, state workers, federal workers, that are not going to be going without a check. We need them at this time to step up. And again, April 1st, if you have the ability to pay, please pay, because in the end, it'll help us solve more, I guess, pressing problems down the road. So through the chair to the maker, if he'll consider some type of friendly means clause or in one of the whereases, and it sort of further goes to Councilor Bach's question and concerns, or at least the way that she framed it, she did an excellent job of framing it, and it's why I'll ultimately going to continue to support the resolution, but trying to, in the interest of trying to bring everyone together here, if the maker would consider some form of a means test, I think we could get there. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
So I just want to be as clear as I can here about accountability and transparency. This resolution is available in full print on every single one of my social media platforms. Nobody here on this council, especially not me, has spoken out and said that this is something that we can enact. I don't believe that our residents expect us to not advocate for things. I would remind this council that we voted on a commercial rent and eviction moratorium last week when this was sent to committee, and nobody has held back their commercial rents or decided not to pass their commercial rents because we did that. I think the idea that we can't advocate for things, which is fully within our power, on the basis that somehow there are residents out there who have the means of paying rent, who are waiting to see the Boston City Council pass a resolution asking for relief for those impacted who cannot pay their rent. In other words, they're just going to hold on to their checks. I don't think that's a real problem. I don't think that's actually something that is going to happen. I think what we're really talking about is people who do not have the means to pay their rent or their mortgage, who right now are looking for relief and looking for us to stand up for them. and to say to this governor and this legislature that the time to act is now, that it's been a state of emergency for close to a month now, that we're talking about a secure in place until May 4th, possibly longer, and that these problems are continuing to grow as they exist now. I don't think that the idea here is that resolutions, which this council has passed numerous resolutions, both this week and last, and in its history, that somehow we don't have the ability to do that anymore, or that we can't do so anymore. I don't understand what these claims that it's not accountable or somehow transparent. Nobody is certainly not. I think the Boston Herald last 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Sean Carter wrote an article in which it was very explicit that we do not have the ability to make this binding. And so I'm not sure what this scare is that is being alleged here, or what this tactic is that somehow we're going to pass a resolution that is going to force people to hold on to their rent money. That's not a real thing for me. And I would ask people to remember what the real goal here is. And the goal here is to advocate for those in our constituencies, both business owners, tenants, and property owners who are in fear right now because they can't make their payments as we speak. They cannot make them. And as we go into May, where an April shutdown, they're only going to be worse off. We have all received letters, emails, and calls detailing the plight of folks in our communities right now that has nothing to do with this resolution, everything to do with reality on the ground. It's incumbent upon us to address that and to be accountable to the fact that we have an obligation to speak to these issues. And that's what this resolution was about.
Thank you.
It's disingenuous.
We're going to move on. We're going to take this matter by a roll call vote. There are no other speakers. Seeing and hearing no others, we're going to move on with a vote. Madam Clerk, could you we're going to do a roll call for this if there are no other speakers. Did you have it?
May I ask, we didn't take a vote for amended 3, the third amendment, which was amended by Councilor Bach, which the sponsor accepted. So are we just voting on docket number 0559 as amended?
As amended, yes, as it's been amended. So is that third amendment, we want to get that third amendment voted on?
I think so.
Yes. So folks, bear with us. We are now looking at the third amendment. We're going to vote on the third amendment so that we can vote on the resolution in its entirety as amended. Everyone good? Wonderful. Yes. So, Madam Clerk, if you would, again, I know you've done it already, would you please read that amendment into the record, please? Thank you, I appreciate you.
Amendment offered by Councilor Bach. I propose that we strike the words "for those who are eligible" from Amendment 3, such that it would read, "Be it resolved that the Boston City Council requests that the federal government and/or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and/or the City of Boston use the powers vested within them to issue a moratorium, on rent, mortgage payments, evictions, and foreclosures for a period of 90 days, with the option to renew on a quarterly basis until the end of the national, state, and local emergency." So this is the third amendment, which was amended in Council Flaherty's, and Councilor Bach amended it. So this is on the amendment.
All right, so we're going to do a roll call vote for the amendment. And then after the amendment, we will do a roll call vote on the resolution. Okay? Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Councilor Arroyo.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo, yes. Councilor Baker.
No.
Councilor Baker, no. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Bach, yes. Councilor Braden.
Yes.
Councilor Braden, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George.
Yes.
Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey,
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia,
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley,
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes, and Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. The amendment to the third amendment passed with a 12-1 vote.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. We'll now move on to voting on the resolution as amended. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Counselor Arroyo on docket number 0559.
Yes.
Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker,
Should I get ready for the calls tonight to my wife's phone and to my phone?
Counselor Baker?
No.
Counselor Baker, no. Counselor Bach,
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden,
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell,
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards,
Yes.
Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George,
Yes.
is that yes? I'm sorry. Yes. Counselor Flaherty. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. The docket number 0559 as amended has passed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. We will now move on to announcements. At this time, I'd like to remind our viewers that they can receive updates on COVID-19 from the City of Boston by texting BOS COVID, that's BOSCOVID, that's BOSCOVID to 99411. That's 99411. I want to check in with my colleagues to see if anyone wants to make an announcement. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
I just want to commend my colleagues in all the ways that I've seen them stepping up during this crisis with their constituents. I'd especially like to commend Councilor Asabi George, who has been making masks, and I've been following that. It's made me want to have a sewing machine. So I appreciate you getting to work. We might have to figure out a way for me to borrow one. But I appreciate you very much for doing that work. And I appreciate my colleagues for doing what they've been doing on the ground. It's seen and appreciated.
Thank you so much, Councilor Arroyo. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I also want to just thank my colleagues. I've learned a lot throughout this process that I have just witnessed. My hope is that as we continue to develop as a team, we recognize that we are 13 city councilors, we represent 700,000 people, and that we do so in the spirit of recognizing that all means all, and we might not always agree in terms of our politics, but one thing is for sure that we are all working really hard and making sure that everyone gets what they need during this crisis. So I want to continue to encourage us to work as a team and recognize that at the end of the day, all eyes are on us. And how we engage in this process really puts people at ease, knowing that we're all trying to move the boat in one direction. So just really want to thank you, Madam President, for your leadership in guiding us in this process. I know that things can be a little heated, but really do appreciate the energy and the spirit that each of my colleagues bring to the conversation. And so just wanted to uplift that. And then the other piece is that as we continue to move with this uncertainty, I wanted to just make sure that we are always mindful that at the end of the day, our own social and emotional well-being is at stake. So I urge each and every one of you to continue to find ways to let out steam, and to everyone who's tuning in, to recognize that when it comes to this crisis, it's all hands on deck, and we can't just rely on city government to fix everything for us, which is what seems to be, the way that oftentimes we roll. But we also need to recognize that there is lots of strength in our own communities and that everybody needs to play their part in this crisis. And so I encourage people to continue to reach out to our office and offer not just problems, but also provide the solutions and ideas and being engaged in this process, because I believe those best solutions come from the people who are living the realities and doing the work. So please continue to reach out to our office and providing your insights to ways that we can better serve you. So thank you all for this, and I'm really proud to be a part of this council.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Arroyo, for mentioning the masks. Over the last week and a half, the Boston Area Mask Initiative has received over 7,000 requests for masks, as I mentioned earlier, and we've done about just over 2,000. Never did I think I'd spend countless hours every night sewing masks, but it is the small piece and the small way that we can contribute. I do want to, and I think that I've done this before, but I want to continue to thank the teachers and staff of the Boston Public Schools who continue still today to make sure that all of our students have their Chromebooks, have access to their work and to their materials. I really want to thank our teaching staff in particular, and I suppose our parents at home who are participating very actively in that teaching, but thank our teaching staff for really doing things differently, because this is a very different environment that surprised many of us. Quickly we shifted from a classroom experience to an online experience, and we weren't prepared for it. None of us were prepared for it. Who could prepare for this pandemic in this moment? It caught many of us, and too many of us, off guard. But I want to thank them. Yesterday I had the opportunity to say hello from a safe distance to a number of our EMTs and paramedics who work in the city of Boston 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are responding to our most sick residents, and they don't get to stay home and isolate. They have to go to work every day. So I want to thank them for continuing to protect us and care for us, especially in this time of crisis and of need. Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to make a statement.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, the chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. And I just wanted to highlight that Councilor Mejia had an excellent working group last night of Latino leaders across the city. I had an opportunity to participate in it along with a few other city councilors as well. And just the work Councilor Mejia is doing, especially communicating with residents that may speak Spanish. It's exceptional outreach that she is doing, and it's desperately needed. I know many of my colleagues also speak Spanish and communicate Spanish effectively, but I just wanted to highlight Councilor Mejia for an excellent meeting last night. And the final point I wanted to make, Madam President, is over the last several months, I have seen residents of Boston coming together during this difficult time, especially our seniors and persons with disabilities. They've been in this city a long period of time. They know what sacrifice is, and they're doing their best to make this city safer and better. And so I'm so proud of the seniors in our city that are contributing so much to our city and to our country in providing a positive example for all of us. So I just want to highlight our senior citizens throughout the city. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to echo Councilor Flynn with respect to Councilor Mejia's hearing last night and intentionality around including certain populations in their language. The response from folks on the ground was that it was great. So you may not be getting all those responses, so I wanted to raise that up. And lastly, not to belabor the point with respect to how the meeting started on rules and votes and all of that, just wanted to be clear. wasn't trying to challenge your authority, but just making sure I was making my point with respect to certain things, because it was the first I was hearing we're going to do some of that. So just wanted to make that point clear. I think some people in maybe the public space were like, what was that? So just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Yeah, just wanted to end with a reminder that the chair started with, that today is Census Day. And so if folks haven't filled out their census, I have my census here. I will say, you know, I'm a city councilor and it was sitting on my, you know, table where my mail piles up, and things have been a little busy and I hadn't gotten to it. And this morning I was like, all right, it's Census Day, and I opened it and I went online, and it took 5 minutes to put in everyone from my household. I don't have any small children, but if you have small children, they get included too. I just want to really remind everybody that, you know, we're gonna keep taking census responses and encouraging census responses for months ahead. But today is Census Day. Get it done today.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, the chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council Brock, for bringing up the census. I'd also like to uplift those families that are being cyberbullied during this time, you know, to make sure that we send, you know, things along, messages along to those families that are being bullied by other people through social media. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there other announcements? Okay, seeing none, we will move on, and we will close out our meeting with memorials, as we always do. Sadly, the number of coronavirus deaths in our Commonwealth continues to rise, and in Boston, it has risen to 3 in our beloved city. So today we will adjourn our meeting in memory of them, as well as the following individuals. For Councilor Arroyo, Cleta Cora Martinez Ellison. For Councilor Bach, Reverend William Barnwell. For Councilor Braden, Charles Francis Christ and Robert J. DeSoris. For Councilor Flaherty, Paul Martin and Ronald Adams. For Councilor Flynn and Flaherty, Gerard Yanovitz. For the chair, Siebert Grant Jr., Deborah Price, Daniel Richardson, Jerry Williams, Manu Dibango, and for the entire council, civil rights legend Joseph Lowry. Let's take a moment of silence. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in the memory of the aforementioned individuals, and it is scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, April 8th at 12 noon. For the safety of the general public and all involved, the meeting will be held remotely and posted online. Viewers will be able to watch the council meeting live on YouTube if they go to boston.gov/city-council-TV. Again, that's boston.gov/city-council-TV, and click on the link. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the council meeting is adjourned. Thank you.